Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk this week. We are going to dive into some energies today. We're missing one of our lovely counterparts. We'll touch on that in a second, but grab your coffee, settle in, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, and let's get into it. Ooh, I have a Starbucks today. I
Lovely.
treated myself on this Friday.
Isn't that lovely? Isn't that
I had
lovely?
a
Able to
I
do
had a
that.
hectic start to the morning, so I was like, you know what? Gonna get that apple oat macchiato is like chef's kiss from Starbucks.
That is
Fall
a good one.
feels equinox, it's officially fall.
Yes.
Whew, it's been how are you doing? How are you doing this week?
It's been a lot. It's been a wild week. And I think we are going to dive straight into that right away.
Yeah.
But first, we just want to mention that Lisa's not here today because unfortunately, her family has or is in the experience of a sudden death of a family member. And
Mhm.
so we just thought maybe we could all take a few minutes, all of us, anyone who's watching, just for a few moments. And if we can send love to her family for what they're going through, and for the beautiful soul that,
Mhm.
has crossed over and is returning back home. So all of our love and energy can just, if we can just pour it into them for just a moment here. So if you
Mhm.
guys can join us here for a moment. And in this moment here of quiet contemplation, we ask that Lisa and her family may feel the love from all of us, bringing them support, stability, safety, and just this feeling of being held as they move through this experience. And we also send with our energy love to the beautiful soul, like we said, who has crossed back home. That her journey, as she reawakens to the other side, be received in love and peace and a beautiful sense of completion for the life lived here. Lovely.
Yeah,
All
that was
right.
beautiful. I had chills. We love you, Lisa and family, and oh, such a
Absolutely. So, this has truly been a wild week of events, of twists of fate, of wild tech issues, wild communication issues going awry, and even to the point I know you and I discussed, like feeling the literal energies within our bodies being wonky. I know yesterday I was feeling this like uh, frequency hum of energy that was different than our traditional earth frequency. I could actually hear it and feel it. So it's been a really whirly week.
Mhm. Funny you say whirly because even I think I still said to you yesterday when I would close my eyes, I kept feeling like I was just in a whirlpool. Like I just felt this, swirling of energy and like feeling like you're just being sucked into a vortex or something. It was really intense.
And what's interesting is we have the change, we have the equinox that is today, yesterday, today, depending
Yep.
where you are.
Hmm.
We also have, though, the new moon happening on Sunday. But you and I talked about last Sunday. So last Sunday, the 18th,
Hmm.
there was a distinct change in energy that happened, right? A
Hmm.
distinct forward momentum. And we talked that September would be a forward momentum month. We were talking about that throughout the summer, but it really clicked into gear on Sunday. And after that is when we really started noticing these synchronistic odd events, whirl, all of the things leading up to the equinox and intensifying, I think,
Hmm. Hmm.
up to this new moon. Like, this is
Hmm.
a really powerful changing, uh, almost, I want to say, karmic alignment for the collective.
Hmm.
Like things clicking into place for the collective for what is to come.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And even taking it back a few weeks prior to that, or I guess a full week prior to that, was the full moon, which
Mm.
for me, like I've felt, maybe it's because I've been really kind of in the depths of 3D life for the last, 6 months or so. Things have been really busy and I haven't really felt that in tune with full moons, like, maybe little bits here and there, but nothing like, phew, that was a lot. And that one just knocked me off my feet. I was anxious and emotional and stressed and high and low and all over the place. And then it felt like it kind of just stirred everything up. And then halfway through that 2-week cycle leading up to the new moon, we hit Sunday, and all of a sudden it felt like everything, like I'm kind of getting the visual of like a tornado, and there's that whirling visualization again, but like everything's just kind of flying around and you see the debris, you see all the stuff. And I don't mean that in a destructive way, so don't hear that, but kind of whirling around. And then Sunday it was just like, and it just all kind of fell or clunked into place in a very abrupt manner. I feel like, and I've spoken to a number of intuitive clients, coaching clients, friends, and so many people are saying like, Sunday, this happened. Sunday, I got in an argument with family. Sunday, me and my partner had a really important conversation. Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Um, so really interesting. And I'm not even aware of any like important astrological alignments on Sunday or what that's about. But yeah, it really felt like something kind of just clunked into place. And then this week has just, it feels like that has happened. And yet there's a lot of movement still. Like it's just a very, very strange week for
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, and I still really feel it today. Like even as we're talking, I'm
Mhm.
feeling really whirly, and I've got my
Yeah.
feet flat on the ground, which is what I
Mhm.
do when I really need to ground, and like I'm having to work at it. So I'm curious if, a lot of people watching are feeling that same thing too. Because we're not, I was gonna say we're not through it, but I don't think that's accurate. I think this is a new phase of energy, and we are getting used to or adjusting to this new phase of energy, like this clunk. Because all last week, Spirit kept talking about alignments and like things coming into alignment. And Monday, Tuesday, they were like, this is about readjusting. Is there anything you need to adjust? There's going to be little adjustments in your life of things. And then it was about alignment of spirit coming in to align with what we have been setting our intentions towards, working on creating all this stuff so that it can align at a peak point.
Mhm.
And so the shifts that are taking place to make that happen are almost kind of like, I want to say, burping or jarring themselves through time. And there's these weird,
Mhm.
like, time blips or
Mhm.
jarring feelings in what is normally just really fluid and we don't quite notice. And maybe that's a little tough to understand, but that's the only way I can explain it. Is like there's these odd jarring moments to clunk these other pieces into alignment because we're really, like they're showing me right now, the imagery is we are on track, we are on the train. And so some things, you know, their timing of getting on this train is actually running up and jumping into the train, and that's kind of a jarring thing, whereas others, other things were on board already.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because for me, fall is one of my favorite seasons. I love the transition of like it's hot, it's intense to the crispness and the coolness. And I know we just sometimes disagree on that because I'm like, all the sweaters, all the cozies. I like when it's colder. Um, but I always loved fall, like from a student perspective. I've been obviously a student for so long, but it,
Mhm.
the fall time feels like new and fresh, even though, that's not necessarily the energetic vibe. It's the death and the rebirth, right? As we start to, especially in the Northern Hemisphere and this part of the year, we start to, see the trees shed their leaves and plants start to die off and all of those things. But for me, it's always a really like renewing time, it feels like. And it's, kids are back to school and we're in this kind of like exciting little energy. And this year it just feels so much more, I'm going to use the word chaotic. And, I want to say too, we're not saying these things as in like a bad doom and gloom way. I think it's just, we can look around, we can see a lot of headlines, we can see a lot of things happening. There's a lot going on all at once right now, and it's all culminating at once, which I do find quite interesting. And that can feel really scary in association with this intense, whirly, chaotic, semi ungrounded energy. And so, yeah, I guess all to say, like, we've been really feeling it. I've been really feeling it this week.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So, tying that into the new moon then on Sunday, new moons, as we know, always being a thing of like setting intentions. What do you want? What do you want to put into place to flourish through the moon? I think within this whirl, we can find grounding in really focusing on what is aligned for us. Like, what do we want? What are we noticing is aligning and amplifying that energy right now so we don't get caught up in the 3D world, like you said. I think this is something that Spirit was talking about a lot in saying, like, check your perspective, check what's happening. There's lots of purging happening, energetically, emotionally, all of that. And I think if we use this new moon to our advantage by really diving in, whether that be journaling or just real like moments of conscious thought of what do I want to do? Like, what am I really, what is my track? What does my train look like on my track? What is that? And then stay true to that, right? Like, hold on to your train because I think it'll be really easy right now to fall off and get caught up in the world if we're not
Mhm,
careful what we're ingesting in terms of media,
mhm,
narratives, all of that kind of stuff. And I don't think it means that the things that we're reading about or seeing aren't real or valid, but it's like what is within your reach of your control right now, because sometimes we if we don't check in on that, we can feel like all is kind of crazy and hopeless. And that's not a perspective that I like to live in personally.
mhm,
Like I will try and spin a positive on almost anything
mhm,
because that's what I've learned kind of keeps me rolling. But yeah,
mhm.
that's my point. That's
Yeah.
my point right there.
And done.
10, complete.
Let's wrap it up for today. I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, no, that's really fair. And I think your point about like remembering what's within our control, because in times of intense energy like this, in times where we're looking around the world being like, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? There's a hurricane coming into the east coast of Canada that everybody's bracing for. And it's funny because I'm hearing from a lot of, I don't know that many people out there, but they're like, yeah, we got it. This is kind of status quo for us. Yet out here, there's a real panic energy about it. Like, I know I was even feeling like messaging all my people the other day, being like, are you going to be okay? Are you going to be okay? And they're all like, yeah, we got it covered. This is kind of old news for us. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, all to say, I just feel like it's not to say don't care about the things happening in the world, and I know that's not what you're saying. Um, but it's to say like do what you can within your own control, right? We can't prevent whether a hurricane comes or not. We can't prevent, certain world events happening. What we can do is, and I know you've talked about this before on your podcast or even from an alignment perspective, like show up in the way that you feel called to, whether that's helping in some way or whatever. But remembering that like I can't fly out to the East Coast and make it not happen. So can I find within myself some grounding, some peace,
Mm-hmm.
process some of the emotions that are coming up, hold space for the ickiness or the toughness or the whatever things are coming up around a lot of these things and a lot of this energy, and then move forward. Because as you said, like for you, you like to spin things for positive and that keeps you rolling. It's like what's going to keep you rolling in the healthiest way possible, because we're going to keep rolling. So do you want to keep rolling in a really rocky, ungrounded, anxious, stressed way, or do you want to try and transmute, process, feel the feelings, move through them, journal, do whatever you do for you, and then keep rolling in a more grounded, supported way?
Mm-hmm. And we kind of talked about this leading up to September, and we said September is when we start this uphill climb of this second half of the ascension and growth that we've been talking about. And, we were saying how we're hitting the point now, like if you envision doing a hike, right? When you first start your hike, there's a period where you're on the road or at the trailhead, like at the entry point. It's pretty flat, you're going on a hike. But then there's the point where you transition into the environment of the forest, right? Like you
Mm,
start to go into the darkness. And I feel like this is what we are stepping into now is the actual darkness, the forest part of the hike. Now, if you're not prepared for a hike, and you're going in and it's getting dark and you don't have a backpack, you don't have food, you don't have, a rain jacket and warm options, then you're in for a wild ride. And it may
mhm,
not be pretty and it may be quite horrible. But if you are prepared energetically with your thoughts, with your sense of self, and you go in it can be a really neat adventure where you might have some tough times, but by the time you get to the top of that hike, you're going to be like, wow, look at what we did.
Hmm.
Right? So it's two totally different ways to step into the dark. The dark can either consume you on the trail if you're not ready, or it can be a part of your journey that really lets you see your grit and your will and your strength of self, right? And so I feel like we're just stepping in now to that dark. And so it's really about not getting caught up in the spin of things, especially I think right now, conspiracies too, whenever this kind of whirl energy comes up, it
Hmm.
whirls up a lot of conspiracies. And I'm not going to say which ones are conspiracy and which ones aren't,
Hmm.
because that's not for me to tell people what is the truth and what isn't in that way. It's perspective. But it's about, exploring whatever it is you're reading, seeing, and then come back to what feels right for you again,
Hmm.
right? Like alignment. It's so about
Hmm.
alignment right now and not just being caught in this tidal wave or spookiness of the dark forest.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, as you were talking, Spirit said something interesting that I was like, huh, I haven't ever really thought of it like this before. That to remember that conspiracies are often a way for us to try and make sense of something that maybe doesn't feel in alignment or that doesn't make sense to us. And so it is kind of a sense of trying to control how we see, feel, view a certain thing. So that can be in a quote unquote positive way or a quote unquote negative way, depending on where you fall with any given thing. So remembering that, like, some conspiracies have evidence, some conspiracies don't, but we can also, facts can be shifted and changed and viewed in different perspectives and different meanings put on different things. And so it's all just a way of us trying to make sense of something
Mhm.
that doesn't make sense or resonate. And that is a way our brain is trying to control, right? It's trying to understand something because when we see something that we don't understand, that can create a lot of uncertainty. That can create a lot of fear. What's our cute little brain's primary purpose? To keep us alive and keep us safe. So
Mhm.
if we're constantly, especially when we've been living the last, handful of years in a high stress, highly activated world where
Mhm.
a lot of us are chronically stressed. And so your body, your brain is going to default to, like, how can I be safe? How can I be safe at any given moment? That's just what we're trying to do. And so even in that, like, there can be so much whirl and, like, this is right, this is wrong, that's conspiracy, that's not, da da da. Like you were saying, it's not for us to say
Mhm.
what is or what isn't true, real conspiracy, not. It's for each of us to find alignment within our own experience and our own understanding of things. And I would just say that regardless of what you're reading about, feel in alignment with or not in alignment with, checking in with how is it making you feel?
Mhm.
Is it creating more panic and stress for you? And is it something that you can control or not? Because if it's creating more panic and stress and it's not something you can control, is that serving you?
Mhm.
Or do you need to take that information and then do something with it for yourself so that you're not moving forth with whatever the topic is from a place of, ah, because it feels like I'm feeling that so much in my body right now. Even as I'm talking about this, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. I feel very like because it feels like there's just this panic and this fear because there's just so many pieces to this puzzle of whatever is happening right now
Yeah.
in this big change, this big forward movement, this big, clearly 2022 is going out with a bang and gonna really have a lot to it.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, like how can we be in that in the best way possible for us?
Yeah. Yeah, because Spirit has said that it is going to get darker and darker as we move through the fall. But again, and this might be Jeanette's crazy positive spins, but I really believe this that yes, it may be darker, but we have a flashlight, we have a torch, and we can shine our torch in the direction we're going. And that is our inner light. That is knowing our sense of self, right? And
Mhm.
that is what can give us that stability. And I mean, think about it. The woods can be beautiful in the daytime and little sounds and things. You can look around and be like, oh, that little squirrel, that rustling over there. Oh, that's a owl. Oh, this. And you're like, wow, nature, beautiful. Whereas at nighttime, the same rustling squirrel and the same owl, because you can't see it, can, really amplify this terror feeling, right? But it's just perspective. So remember, anytime you come back to self and you check in with self, what does this resonate for me? Where is my point of control? What is my alignment? Is when you shine your light brightest, and you don't need to be afraid no matter how dark it gets,
Mhm.
right? Because again, you have prepared your mind, body, spirit for this uphill climb. And again, remember, it's not a downhill, free for all garage sale, yard sale, land at the bottom like a mess. This is consciously going on this uphill climb of ascension throughout this next phase. So that
Mhm.
puts you in more control. So I think that's
Mhm.
a really important thing to remember. And it's something that I
Mhm.
keep trying to remember anytime I feel myself kind of be like, oh my God, what now? And then
Mhm.
I'm like, oh yeah, wait, okay.
Mhm.
I can come back to self because that's really all I can do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
And I was even thinking too, it's even our body's own beautiful innate ability for our eyes to adjust to the darkness, right? If you're in a room and you flick off the lights and all of a sudden it's pitch black, you can't see anything. The longer you're in it, your eyes start to, in an incredible way, adjust to, oh, okay, I'm dark. Let's change things. And now I can start to see a little bit better. And that starts to get easier and easier the longer you're in the dark. So, but again, if you start running around and flailing, you're probably going to trip over something or you're going to stub your toe or something's going to happen. So if you can just pause and have a moment and allow your eyes to adjust, allow yourself to adjust. And that comes back to, we preach it all the time, but it's like what grounds you? What is self-care for you? What allows you to process what you're feeling? I was chatting with you the other day about I was really feeling fired up about something and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to like do anything about this. I'm just going to hold space for it right now and just journal about it and be with it a little bit. And to be honest, I think I processed enough of that and I worked with my guides enough that it kind of took care of itself. I didn't even really need to do anything about it anymore.
mhm.
So again, allowing ourselves to just keep coming back to you, keep coming back to what's grounding, and keep making the next step forward and allowing your eyes to adjust to the dark, allowing yourself adjust to the dark. Because we talk about dark, that doesn't also necessarily mean bad, right? Certainly we're seeing things that are scary or intense or worrisome, and that's totally fair. And it gets darker every year around this time. The days get shorter and shorter and shorter. I actually really love that. I like this part of the year where it's like things are cozy and you have little candles and lamps and it's not bright blaring all the time. There's something really comforting about that for me. So it all comes back to the perspective, I think, and how you can support yourself in moving through it if there's discomfort associated with fill in the blank, whatever's
I think
whatever's
that's
happening.
beautiful.
So I'm curious then, how do you feel like we work with the new moon given this energy? Or what do your guides say?
I mean, a big one is intention, but let me just actually ask the three guides of light because I've been feeling them around all morning. So just one moment, please.
Mhm. Should I sing some like elevator music?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they're saying nurture and perspective. So we've talked a lot about perspective. But then they're saying nurture, kind of like what you were just touching on there, is like what are the things that you can do to also bring yourself comfort? So not just like alignments and intention of what you want in your life and striving for goals, but like what also brings you comfort in these times. So, is it when you feel overwhelmed, having a favorite blanket and a favorite place that you sit in your house that, maybe looks out the window? Like, where are your places of comfort? Maybe it's a bath, maybe it's certain
Mm,
stones and crystals. And using them, like actually taking the steps to use those tools of comfort when you need. Don't
mhm,
bypass it, don't ignore when you're kind of calling out for that because it'll instantly bring you home to yourself. And again, your home frequency within allows you to feel at home anywhere. So
mhm,
notice what those things are. Like, for an example, one of them for me, if I'm feeling really crazy and stressy, I have this really cozy sweater that I will put on and I can wear it anywhere. And I actually bought it purposely because I was like, okay, I don't really like the cold. I don't like when it's dark and rainy, which is BC in the winter.
Yeah, fair.
But this will be like something that's really comforting so that I can consciously put it on and bring myself comfort no matter where I have to go. Right? So, like, it's something little, but it's making conscious choices of what can bring you those feelings of comfort.
Mhm.
Right? So that's another thing um, that they're mentioning. And there's one other thing. Hold on. Okay. And they're also saying share stories.
Mhm.
They're saying share your stories because the stories can spread like the wind. And I was like, what do you mean like the wind? And they said like the wind that moves through fall, allow it to share your stories. And then when I asked which kind of stories, they said your stories of how you move through things. Help others become more conscious by being vulnerable and authentic when you're feeling overwhelmed, and then also what you've done to move through it. So for example, if you're rushing around and say a friend calls and they're like, hey, can you chat? And normally maybe you would, but you're like, you know what? I can't right now. I just need 20 minutes. Can I call you back in 20 minutes? I'm going to get my cozy sweater on. I'm going to make myself a tea. I'm going to sit down for a sec because I'm totally overwhelmed, but I'll call you right back. And when we normalize that of, just being truthful instead of sucking it up all the time, it helps to normalize it for other people to then do the same thing for them. So share stories through the wind.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And so, as you were saying with the new moon, it's often about setting intentions and planting the seeds for the things that you want to call in. So, maybe part of that, obviously, if you have things you're working towards or desires that you are wishing to call in, intentions that you're wanting to place, going through that normal process. But maybe part of that then, if it feels in alignment for you, is planting intentions and seeds around creating comfort for yourself, asking for or creating intentions around people, places, things, experiences over the next while that can bring you comfort because we don't always have to set intentions on a new moon about like, I want to get a new job, right? Maybe that's something and that's important for you in this time and cool, do that. But you can also call in experiences towards yourself. You can call in feelings, emotions, sensations towards yourself because they're all frequency and vibration, right? Just as any other thing is. So, maybe it's calling in how can I feel supported and calm and nourished during this next season?
Mm-hmm.
Or, what calling in a new cozy blanket, you
Yeah,
know, go
yeah,
to Costco and there's amazing throw blankets that are all fluffy and cozy on sale. And you're like, perfect, I'm going to get that. We can plant seeds and have intentions for all sorts of things, including what we desire for our general experience, not just
absolutely.
tangible physical things.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. All right. Well, any other closing things you feel we should share?
Hmm. No, I don't think so. I do feel like this whole forest analogy that we've been using. So when I came into the office before I sat down, I was carrying my journal and a couple of my card decks, and this one like flew out of my hands
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
it fell on the floor, and I was like, that's weird. Like, why is it still flying? And I was like, I wonder if I have a use for you a little bit later. So, ooh, yeah, that's fun. let's just let's let them decide what our
Yeah.
final. Hmm, okay, so um, first one that flew out was the bear spirit and
Mm,
all about healing. Um, and so I think for me, healing is always about coming back to ourselves, regardless of whether we're talking about physical healing, emotional healing, world healing, spiritual healing, whatever it is. I feel like it's always about coming back to ourselves. Um, and then the second one is retreat, and it's the spirit guardian of winter, which is interesting because winter is a very like cozy, this like little cabin in a snow globe. Um, And that's kind of what we've been talking about as we lead into winter, right? And we were just saying how this season feels really intense. And so I'll be really curious to see, because winter doesn't start until, for the northern hemisphere, until end of December, right? Technically, even
Mhm.
though it can be snowy where I'm from long before that. So I'll really be curious how retreating now will lend us. Maybe we'll have a really beautiful, peaceful
Mhm.
winter season that we can all just kind of be held in. So
Mhm.
that, and then the last one is the stag spirit, which is all about leadership. And so that's exactly what we've been talking about, right? Coming back home to ourselves, cozy, retreating, but having to choose that too. Because, looking around the world right now, that's not necessarily going to be the default setting for a lot of us and for our experience. And so we kind of have to take a little bit of a leadership role in our own life to say, like, this is what I'm desiring for myself right now.
Yeah. I
So,
think
yeah,
that's cool.
interesting.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that.
Mm,
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you guys can all take a deep breath, a sigh of relief, um, a breath that grounds you into your truth and who you are, and that you really do make the most of this new moon energy. And we will be back again next week. So, as always, if you guys are looking to deepen your journey as well, do check out avalonspirit.com. Many things available there. And if this is your first time watching, thanks so much for joining us. And please do subscribe and share it if you feel like this message would really benefit someone.
mm,
So,
mm.
we will see
Wonderful.
you guys next week.
See you.
Have a good one.